Hello watch collectors. When you think of Tudor, what comes to mind? For many, it is the shadow of his bigger brother, Rolex. But today I want to make a different argument. Tudor has carved out a sweet spot as the best affordable luxury watch brand. Now here's why. Tudor is not cheap by any means. Their Swiss-made automatic watches show real craftsmanship, carry a good amount of prestige, especially among watch enthusiasts, and offer distinctive designs. At the same time, Tudor also isn't overpriced. With many if not most watches at the $3,000 price point on the secondary market, the brand actually delivers serious watches that punch above their weight. To move up to the next tier of watchmaking, you essentially have to double if not triple your budget for relatively marginal improvements. All the data in this video comes from WatchCharts, the world's leading secondary watch market research platform. Dive into the data yourself at WatchCharts.com. When Tudor was founded in 1926 by Rolex's founder Hans Wilsdorf, the idea was that the brand would offer watches that delivered Rolex's reliability and quality, but just at a lower price point. That has remained mostly true today. It offers a great value proposition for watch collectors. Their watches are obviously well crafted, but you're not paying ridiculous prices for fairly marginal improvements. The main idea here is the law of diminishing returns, which essentially says that after a certain point, the bang you get for your buck gets less and less. In the watch world, that means you've essentially got a few price points where you get very noticeable changes, such as going from no watch to a quartz watch, from a quartz watch to an automatic watch, from a watch that isn't Swiss-made to a watch that is, from a watch that has a group movement to a watch that has an in-house movement, and at the top from a stamped guilloche to a hand-turned guilloche, so on and so forth. But you'll notice that as the watch gets more expensive, the additional money you need to spend to get the next marginal improvement actually gets increasingly higher. For example, $2,000 gets you from a Swatch Moonswatch to a decent vintage Omega Moonwatch. But that gives you essentially nothing more when you're dealing with watches like Pateks and APs, beyond maybe a few bracelet links. Take for example the Black Bay 58, a watch that we've covered actually 2 years ago as the best value for money dive watch, and I would argue that it still is today. The Black Bay 58 comes in black or blue with a 39mm by 12mm case. The black model leans vintage with its gilt and gold accents, while the blue offers a much cleaner and much more modern look. Inside, the movement is COSC certified with 70 hours of power reserve and 200 meters of water resistance. Today, prices have settled on the secondary market for around $2,500, even as retail climbed to $4,300. That is incredible value for what is widely considered one of the best dive watches you can buy. And honestly, because the retail price has gone up and the secondary market price has gone down, that means we've got a better value proposition than what we had 2 years ago. In fact, many watches in the Black Bay lineup are worth considering. In addition to the blue and the black dial 58s, you've also got the smaller and thinner 37mm Black Bay 54 and the 41mm Black Bay 41. The Black Bay 41 was introduced in 2024 with a Meta certified movement. This is an improvement over the COSC certification because Meta is a more stringent standard that's based upon COSC certification. Of course, that comes with a higher price tag, as is $450 pricier than the Black Bay 58 at retail and about $1,000 pricier on the secondary market. I would argue though that each one of these four is a great choice in this price range. Of course, Tudor also has the Pelagos collection, where you have even more solid choices. You've got the 39mm Pelagos reference 25407N, the 42mm Pelagos reference 25600TN with the titanium and steel case, the 42mm left-handed Pelagos LHD reference 25610TNL, and the carbon composite Pelagos FXD with fixed lugs reference 25707KN. With all of them roughly in the same $3,000 price point, you really have a lot of good options from Tudor between the Pelagos collection and the Black Bay collections. I would argue that you will have a very hard time finding other solid options that cost around the same. Let's look at some of those competitors here. The first brand that comes to mind in the same mid-level tier is probably Omega, which of course has the Seamaster collection. You have many variants of the Seamaster Diver 300M and many options under the Aquaterra collection as well. Here you see two of the best-selling ones, both in the $4,000 and change price point. You've also got the Breitling Super Ocean, such as this 42mm variant that competes in that $3,000 price point. Now, all three brands are fairly well respected with decent brand prestige and history. The Breitling is a bit too big and a bit too chunky for me personally, but I know many people might prefer that. Between the Omegas and the Tudor, the clear difference is the meta-certified movement with coaxial escapement in the two Omegas, and possibly the open case bags. Is that worth almost $2,000? The answer is subjective, but I personally would be hesitant to shell out $2,000 more. If anything, you could also get the 41mm meta-certified Black Bay for $3,700. So is either Omega $500 better than that Black Bay? It's hard to make that argument, especially if you like the Black Bay aesthetic. By the way, to avoid making this video even longer, I'm not going to include discontinued models in the comparisons. If I did, then indeed many watches could arguably compete with the Black Bay 58, such as this very recently discontinued Seamaster Diver 300M. It looks visually very similar to the current generation of the Diver 300M, and the movement already has the coaxial escapement, but just not the meta certification. To many, this could be a better deal than the Black Bay 58. In addition to dive watches, Tudor also has great options for GMT models, most notably the Pepsi GMT reference 79830RB. Available on either a black dial or a white dial, this Tudor Pepsi has a 41mm by 14.6mm case, a water resistance of 200 meters, and 70 hours of power reserve. The market price now sits at around $2,800. You also have some other GMT options within the Tudor lineup, such as the Black Bay Pro that resembles a Rolex Explorer 2, a Black Bay 58 GMT on the Coke bezel, and a two-tone Black Bay GMT. All four of them are again in that $3,000 price point. To quickly compare to some of the other GMT watches that come to mind, you obviously think of the Rolex Pepsi, which is 7.5x the price of the Tudor Pepsi. The cheapest Omega GMT at the moment costs nearly double both at retail and on the secondary market. You can also look to Japan and consider the Grand Seiko GMT reference SBGE 253, but that's going to cost you more. All things considered, the Tudor looks like a great option, especially if you're looking to scratch the itch of a Pepsi GMT. Tudor, of course, also has chronograph watches, the most popular one being the Black Bay Chrono reference 79360N. The watch was introduced in 2021. It has a 41mm by 14.4mm case, 200 meters of water resistance, and 70 hours of power reserve. It traded very highly over the first year of its inception, but after the market correction began in early 2022, the price has since dropped to $3,600. That is obviously much cheaper than the Rolex Daytona, but it is also noticeably cheaper than the other options on the market, such as the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch with the 3861 movement and the Hazelite caseback, and the Zenith Chronomaster Sport with the El Primero movement. Beyond the watches we've covered today, Tudor also has a few other fairly distinct, though less popular collections in the lineup. That includes the Tudor Ranger, the Tudor Royal, and the Tudor 1926. These are all cheaper than the dive watches and the GMT watches we've looked at so far today, and arguably compete with a different price segment. But the main case I'm trying to make today is that Tudor really does have a very unique position in that $3,000 price point. Among watches that are similar in craftsmanship and brand prestige, most notably those from Omega, Tudor's watches are much cheaper. To get the next obvious marginal improvement, you have to spend a lot of money. For many of us, that puts Tudor in a sweet spot. Today, while it's still true that Tudor is the more affordable arm of the Rolex group, it has become something more. It has evolved to have its very distinct identity. In fact, because the Rolex group kind of sees Tudor as a testing lab, the products of Tudor are arguably a lot more interesting than Rolex's offerings. We mentioned in our last video, for example, that Rolex's titanium watches are very limited and very expensive, both at retail and on the secondary market. Tudor actually has many titanium watches that are readily available at retail, such as the titanium Pelagos FXD. A watch that, by the way, has fixed lugs, something that's absent in Rolex's catalog. Lastly, I do want to note that a major reason why Tudor presents excellent value right now is due to its very low value retention. Most watches that we looked at today carry a value retention of around minus 40%, meaning that you are essentially losing almost half if you buy the watch at retail. That itself does signal some problems for the brand, and I'm sure Tudor would love to raise its value on the secondary market. Despite being more adventurous than its much more established big brother, Tudor still plays things arguably too safely. The new releases every year tend to be seen as restrained, if not boring, doing things like slightly retouching the case or introducing new dial colors on existing products, many of which are extremely difficult to get, by the way, such as the Inter-Miami chronographs. I would encourage the brand to live up to the slogan of Born to Dare and experiment with its offerings a bit more. Also, the dominance of the Black Bay collections makes many see the brand as a one-trick pony, similar to the Royal Oak story with Audemars Piguet. This could turn many watch collectors away. All things considered, pre-owned Tudors really do present wonderful value for money. The low value retention allows us collectors to pick up great deals on the secondary market. Thriving at this $3,000 price range, Tudor arguably is the best affordable luxury watch brand. What are your thoughts on Tudor? Do you see it as Rolex's shadow or as a standalone brand that deserves its own praises? Please let us know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video today, please like, share, and subscribe to make sure you don't miss our future videos. Check out our website, WatchCharts.com, where you can explore pricing for over 28,000 watches, track market trends, and even monitor your collection's value over time. And if you're looking to buy or sell among fellow collectors, head over to our marketplace at marketplace.watchcharts.com. Our last video looked at the best watches to buy at retail from Tudor's slightly more famous sibling, so please go check it out. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.